Aw.
Oh. So now here's the thing. First of all, for anyone who hasn't seen Chapter 13 of The Mandalorian, for anyone who hasn't seen Chapter 13 of The Mandalorian, aka The Jedi, that's the name of the chapter. They revealed the name of Baby Yoda finally. So we're going to spoil everything in this conversation. So if you don't want to know anything, turn back, come back. We are live right now, but you can always watch the stream later after you've watched that chapter.
After you put the kids to bed.
Yeah, if you can watch it that quickly. But I just want to get this out of the way. If there are people, and I understand there are people who don't like the name Grogu, can they just refer to him as Baby Yoda?
I mean, Mando himself kind of did in the episode.
Or
he's just like, come on, kid. And she's like, Grogu. And he's like, fine, Grogu.
Now, as with all of these episodes, you guys are up watching these the moment they drop, and then I watch them about 2 days later. So I see the internet exploding. I avoid spoilers, but I see the general kind of reaction like, I can't believe they did this, and people are saying they revealed Baby Yoda's name and I wish they just picked something else. So I had about 2 days of this phantom name stirring about, like, what could be so terrible that it upset people. And then I heard it during the episode. I'm like, that's cute. Grogu sounds like it would be in line with Yoda. Like, what's the problem?
I was going to say, like, what I like about it is, it's a 4-letter word like Yoda, and sure, what's the big deal? What did you want, Brian? Oh, hi, Brian.
Hey, Bob.
And then he grows up to have the voice of the dog from Family Guy.
Seth MacFarlane is the child.
Oh, I would.
No,
please. I want to see that.
No,
we talked about.
I'd rather have Mark Hamill voice him.
That'll be the Robot Chicken special.
There you go. But so yeah, to kick things off, this is What If He Doesn't Survive Live, the weekly Mandalorian recap show. I'm here with Mike Crowley of You'll Probably Agree, YPA Reviews, and also David Fowlie, who's cosplaying as Dave Filoni.
Not to get Fowlie,
keeping it real.
He's got to catch up to my gray hair, but this is my Lucas beard with the Filoni hat. How's that?
There you go. And that's no Filoni baloney.
That's right.
Full love.
Yes. So I'm gonna let you guys bask in the glory of this episode, a glory which I, possibly to no one's surprise, do not and cannot share. So tell me why
what
you
a
love
surprise.
Why do you love the Jedi? Not the order, but the
how
chapter.
To love the Jedi.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it basically combined, the samurai and the Western motifs, and the influences that Star Wars has had all along, and it's very okay. I know we've talked about filler before, but if there ever kind of was a filler episode, although this very much ties in with the overall story, basically in this episode, Mando achieves his goal. He ultimately achieves his goal. This was his goal, is to find the child. His goal has changed, right? Over the chapters. Like, first it was to find more of his kind. And then he realized that, I forget who it was who told him. I don't think it might have been Bo-Katan. I forget, but it was like, no, you need to find Jedi, and hand him over to a Jedi. And so that's what he does in this chapter. I mean, he's accomplished his mission, his goal. But of course, as we know, things change. I felt like this was a nice, a cool. Not just nice, but a cool kind of pared down, very kind of like streamlined, easy to, I'll say easy to follow, but I know some people have issues with that. But it is, if you, as far as, narratively, as we go from like point B to C, whatever, it's all the characters easy to figure out. The situation is easy to figure out. And a lot of it is because it is very familiar. to anybody who's seen westerns or samurai movies, and I have no problem with that. That's cool.
Sure.
You know, I really didn't have a whole lot of problems with it. I really like the characters. I like the atmosphere on this planet. You know, when they were talking about, when Bo-Katan referenced this, go to Caledon, the forest planet of Corvus, I'm thinking like lush green. I'm thinking like Endor, right?
Endor, yeah, right.
Yeah, but I love this like burnt out sepia, kind of like a wasted forest, you know, almost like a petrified type forest, very kind of this sepia smog throughout the whole place. And then there's this fortified, you know, village. I just thought that the atmosphere was cool, is kind of mysterious. It makes sense that, you know, we're building up to this. There should be some mystery involved. And yeah, I really had a good time with this, and it was a great payoff for fans of Ahsoka Tano, I thought. I would defer to you, Ian, because you know you pretty much know nothing about the character.
Yeah.
I'm glad one out of three of us is in that situation, because there are viewers like that. So I understand that. I understand the problems that some viewers might have if they haven't seen Clone Wars or Rebels, if they know nothing about the expanded universe or Clone Wars or Rebels. You know, I get it. I understand. But this had a lot of good payoffs for me, and I'm really curious to see what's going to transpire next. You know, I was really satisfied.
Cool. Mike, before you jump in, I just want to mention, because I keep forgetting to do this on the live streams, because we are live and this is an interactive type of thing. If you are dropping in, feel free to leave a comment in the chat if you have questions, if you want to bring up any topics, or there's anything that you want to talk about, or if you vehemently agree or disagree with anything we're talking about, you know, we'll address it. We got the comments open, and yeah, we are open for business. So Mike, talk to us about the Jedi. Building off of David's, I think, well put together defense of the episode. Not that it necessarily needs one.
Well, also don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Smash. I'm bringing it back.
Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Yes.
Yes. Anyways, yeah, I don't want to come off like the overly enthusiastic fan you've seen with the Ahsoka Tano reaction videos, or like their face on the thumbnails, like, you know, because it's just ridiculous.
Welcome to YouTube.
Yeah. He's like, hey guys, what's going on? All right. That's why I say hey everybody, not hey guys. Anyways, so I like this episode for two reasons. Obviously, the fan service for people who have been looking forward to seeing Ahsoka for, you know, God only knows how long, and we finally get that delivery like within 30 seconds of the episode. Once you get the initial kind of recap, you're 2.5 minutes in, boom, you're there. I didn't expect to hear that quick. I was looking at my phone, taking my notes. I look up, all of a sudden I see Rosario Dawson doing a pose, and like any YouTuber, I yelled, yes! And my brother-in-law, who was watching it with me, because we had Thanksgiving at his place, he just kind of went, what?
Who's there?
And, yeah. And then I'm just like, you're not a real Star Wars fan. Don't worry. No, that's literally kind of what I so. But let's say you come in blind, you don't know who these characters are. It felt like the most artistic sort of episode in a way, where it really leaned into the Kurosawa references, you know, the feudal Japan, especially with the banging of the drum in the beginning. They have the beautiful pond, you know, with Bruce Lee's granddaughter who runs the Imperials in that sort of location. You have the burnt down village, as we said, that has a very dire sort of realistic, oh, this is what the Empire has done to people. It really makes you sink it in. And even if you don't know who Ahsoka is, it kind of makes you, perhaps, I'm not sure. I mean, you can speak to it better than I can, Ian. Curious as to who she might be, because she seems like this character that has a very tragic past, who's been heavily affected by what's been around her. It does kind of bring in this curiosity as to what's going to happen next. We get some enormous payoff with who Baby Yoda, Grogu is. And I'm glad that they had the courage to give him a name, because they could have easily gone, well, the fans are not going to like whatever name we give him. But they're like, no, you know, forget it. We got to give him some sort of identity. And overall, this was a highly emotional episode. You kind of got the idea that Mando, sort of piggybacking off of the third episode of the season, there's so much more going on in the universe that he isn't aware of, he doesn't know about. Like, yes, he was sort of a victim of the Clone Wars where his family was murdered and he wound up joining sort of this religious group that was sort of a derivation of the true Mandalorians. But you kind of get the idea, like, he's not sure of this whole backstory of the Jedi and everything. He still kind of feels like, and one wonderful thing about Rosario Dawson's performances, you do kind of get the idea from Mando's perspective of how these Jedi are so weird, how she's so reserved, how like everything is so meditated. So you kind of get the idea of where he stands in the world, how maybe he is sort of an outsider, and things regarding his heritage, regarding where his standing in the universe is going to kind of come together. So it was a very subtle, emotional episode. I really appreciated it on an artistic level. But again, I have my fan blinds on, so I'm fascinated to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't actually thought about until you brought it up, Mike. Was Ahsoka's demeanor, because up until this point, Mando hadn't really heard anything about the Jedi except that they had a war with, Mandalore the Great back in the day. So yeah, there is some tension there early on, but they regard each other in a very kind of reserved, civilized manner. He might have been expecting someone more garrulous, someone that he's used to coming across in these, dusty towns that he keeps blowing through. So that is pretty interesting. As far as Ahsoka Tano's character, the only thing I knew about her, I might be getting this backwards or forwards, was that from the Clone Wars or Rebels, it was revealed that she was Anakin's Padawan. Was that right? He was her master.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then, of course, what happened. And there is a reference to it. She doesn't call him by name, but she does say, it's interesting because when she's in the process of starting to train Grogu, or trying to decide if she wants to train Grogu, she gives him some exercises. Jedi love their exercises with rocks and passing stones between each other. She discovers that he's got a lot of anger at him, which is fascinating because, again, we talk about a recurring theme on this show is how we don't really know what's going on with Baby Yoda. We don't know precisely how old he is because Yoda lived to be over 900 years old. So Baby Yoda might be 100, but he still looks like an infant. And he's got this inner life. He's got inner thoughts, which Ahsoka is able to tune into sort of telepathically using the Force to have an entire conversation, which I don't think they actually speak anything because we get sort of Mando's perspective standing several feet away from this campfire where they're sort of being intimate. And she says, Grogu has a lot of anger in him based on what has happened in the past. Turns out he was at the Jedi Temple during the Great Purge in Order 66. Great, imaginative stuff. I'm imagining what that's like, him being kind of ferried out of that dangerous situation and hidden, much like Yoda was, when he went to Dagobah. He was sort of on the run, but not nearly in as precarious position as Grogu, who was young and ostensibly defenseless. So that's some cool backstory. But the idea that he's got this anger and she won't train him because she's seen what anger can do when it's harbored within a Jedi, a direct reference to Anakin Skywalker, I thought that was great. Mm-hmm. The issue I have with the episode, I've got several, honestly, and which should be no surprise. David, you picked up on the Western setting, the samurai setting. That's all great, but I see it as more of these kind of totems that the points of reference, pop cultural references that the creators of this show like to indulge in, which is fine. But at a certain point, they just become these sort of reference points. I don't know why there's a samurai planet on this, woodland outpost, whatever. It doesn't really matter why. It's just that I don't know that they do anything with it except have a weird kind of samurai fight between these two women, between a woman and a man. Sorry, Mando's not a woman. But it reminded me of the House of Blue Leaves sequence from Kill Bill, which in direct contrast to what we get in this episode, you have two characters that have a history, who have conflict, who have stakes, like real life and death stakes going at it, and you understand why they're fighting, why it's important. In this episode of The Mandalorian, we meet this dictator who's running this small town, who's, all of the villagers are being oppressed and tortured and killed. Mando wants information from this, or wants to help out Ahsoka because she wants information from this person. So like 3 or maybe even 4 other episodes in this very short season, he blows into a town, needs information, can't get it unless he does a task to help somebody, does the deed. Ahsoka does face off with, what's the name of the lady who's running the town?
I think was it Maldora Estridge, or no, wait, hold on. Keep talking.
Melissa Etheridge, right?
Yeah.
No, wow. Sorry, I got it mixed up because this is like a day ago and I was tired. But no, Mando has a face-off with Michael Biehn parallel to, yes, it was Ahsoka. It was 2 women. That's why I was thinking of the whole Kill Bill
Morgan
thing.
Elspeth.
Right. There's again, it's this dictator character we're introduced to in the film, in the show.
Magistrate,
yeah, a magistrate. She's disposed of, maybe, I guess, by the time the show's over. It's another but it's another one of these episodic situations where nothing really carries over narratively from one episode to the next. I'm getting really tired of it, especially because towards the end of the episode, when Ahsoka finally says, I can't train him, I won't train him because of my past, what I will do is say, go to this planet, climb to the top of this mountain, send out this signal. There may be a Jedi who can help you. I'm like, lady, I thought you were the Jedi who was going to help me. What are we even talking about here? So he's just starting all over again. And I feel like this show has been starting all over again for the past 4 episodes. I like that Michael Biehn's in it, but again, he shows up and then he's killed. Ahsoka, when she's got the lightsaber up to the neck of the lady, she's like, tell me where Admiral Thrawn is. I know a little bit about Admiral Thrawn, and I'm like, okay, great. So now we've got 2 main villains in this show that we have to contend with. We're going to dispose of Grand Moff Gideon at the end of this season, probably, and the next time it's going to be all about Thrawn. On top of that, for the last year, when they announced Ahsoka's coming to the show and it's Rosario Dawson, I was like, oh my God! She shows up in the episode and she's gone by the end of the episode. She's probably going to come back, but I'd like to see someone stick around with Mandalorian and Grogu for more than an episode and not necessarily just coming back like Carl Weathers and Cara Dune. Grief Karga. I'm finally getting his name right. I want some consistency here. I love that we have this duo. But at a certain point, the duo showing up, doing a thing, and then just going on to show up somewhere else, doing the same kind of thing over and over again with like a sentence of information out of every 45 minutes, it's not really enough for me.
Well, I think that's an interesting analysis. That was something I pointed out in my review. I did give it 4 stars, or I should say Guinnesses. I did feel a little bit like, I wonder if people are going to get tired of sort of the jobs that Mando's assigned to, and then going off on another planet. The thing I felt is that there was far more emotional relevance in it. Like, he wasn't assigned just to do any other job. He's assigned to meet someone who essentially is going to form his viewpoint for the rest of his life, possibly, and certainly his connection to Grogu. But yeah, I did feel like I kind of wish Ahsoka would stick around rather than show up again and perhaps like a last minute save hero moment, if I were to theorize. But it is something that I can understand being frustrating. But essentially, I think they are really setting up the story now or they have set up the story where it's this dynamic sort of thing. But I certainly understand your critique. It's a fair one.
Yeah.
Particularly this season,
yeah,
feels like it's building and building and building and building and I say this for the last 3 episodes, now we've got 3 episodes left before we have to wait a year to find out where this story's going, if anywhere. So that's just where I'm kind of at. I mean, again, we talk about in the last few episodes how there have been opportunities for either Mando and the child to be separated, or for them to join up with, say, the other Mandalorians and have more of a group dynamic. I think some of the coolest stuff in here was Ahsoka talking about Grogu and Mando really for the first time at the prospect of them being separated because they've been so bonded together. He's like, well, you're going to take him off my hands. I might be shedding a tear or two under this mask. I get that he's probably kind of relieved at the end when, it's the 2 of them together and they have to figure out he's bought some time, or she's given him some time, so they don't have to part. But wouldn't it have been cool to see Ahsoka join up with them and start the training, and then have that gradual like jealousy or more that flowering of the relationship, a different dynamic going on there than perhaps we've seen. But the thing is, I don't think this is a filler episode. I came to the conclusion last night that this may just, what I may really want out of Star Wars at this point is another movie. Because a film is, and we talked a bit about this last week, it's forced to condense the plot and the action and the momentum of the story into a digestible package. Whereas this is something that could ostensibly go on forever. And right now it kind of feels like it is.
Yeah, it certainly does have that feeling. I mean, if I were to guess, Ahsoka is going to trip, but again, I am kind of in that same train. It's like, I'm sick of guessing what's going to happen. I just want to see it happen, But yes, hopefully, I mean, Filoni certainly gave us an enormous payoff with this one. I think we'll get a payoff at the end, but it won't pay off on everything, and it will have that to be continued sort of element to it. I mean the main thing I always worry about with every episode is what's the length, and I'm like, how much is left? How much story are they going to tell?
Right. I wonder if the finale is going to be the longest. That would be pretty cool. But
because we had a half-hour one a couple weeks ago. This one was like 47 minutes.
Yeah. Right? And I think the Marshall was about 47 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, because that was the kickoff, right?
Yeah.
Now here's a question, Mike. I'm curious about this, and David, you might weigh in on this too, because I think you both may have referred to this earlier. What is the payoff in this episode? Is it something, again, from an outsider, which is kind of me? I'm a Star Wars fan, at least I thought I was, until I started seeing all this stuff that references all this other stuff I don't know about. But is it a payoff within the context of The Mandalorian, or is it a payoff particularly in terms of Ahsoka Tano, who you've been following and have loved from these other series?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, it's definitely a payoff for a certain level of fan. The fans who've seen Clone Wars and Rebels. Ahsoka, actually, her introduction was in that Clone Wars movie, which was pretty awful. The Clone Wars series was good, but the one that was in a theater back in I think 2008 or something. She was the best part of that. But just to introduce and she started out as like this kind of petulant character, much like Anakin, and that's why Yoda gave Anakin to her. Saying, okay, you were petulant too. I'm going to have you basically, train another, a headstrong, petulant Padawan. So they butt heads because they were very similar initially, and then they started to drift away because, well, he started drifting away too. So it's very interesting once you commit to the show, and how she appears in Rebels is very interesting too. And of course, how Rebels, actually the final season of Clone Wars that came out last year, how that ended was very interesting. In fact, I guess the payoff here is literally the last scene that we see her in the last season of Clone Wars. She's in this she's basically in the same outfit, this kind of like shawl type, almost like a almost like a poncho robe, Jedi robe thing. Basically, this is the live action version of that. And a lot of people are just saying, oh, well, this is the first time, Ahsoka Tano's been in live action. And that's true. But it literally just feels like, this is how we last saw her. And all these years have passed. what's been going on. Why is she on this desolate, kind of forested planet? And she doesn't even have like a little Yoda hut or anything. She's just hanging out. As far as we know, we haven't seen her. She doesn't, as far as we know, she doesn't have a home or anything, and she may, but we don't see it in this chapter. She's just hanging out in the forest. It's very interesting to me. It's like, is this a self-exile like Kenobi, like Luke, and what propelled that? Like Yoda, all the Jedis, they basically, dispersed, by choice throughout the galaxy because the Empire is hunting them down and everything. But at how long do you stay away from those who need you? And obviously, I think for her in this episode, I mean, she definitely wants information from the magistrate, but she also wants to, free up these enslaved villagers, and they're oppressed, and she wants to help them. If she can get some information out of the magistrate, great. And why does she want to find, was it Grand
Admiral Thrawn?
Grandmaster Flash, Grand Admiral Thrawn is because that's the last time she saw Ezra Bridger. Who's Ezra Bridger? Yeah, okay, so I know it's crazy, but again, that's kind of the payoff to see something, a character that was so pivotal to those animated series, be mentioned here and be mentioned earlier and then come to life here. I guess that is the payoff too for that level of fan. For your level of fan, Ian, I mean, I think the payoff here is, like I said, this is basically Mando's met his mission. And there's a point here at the end of it where he's basically saying to Grogu, I guess this is goodbye. And there's even like a moment they have, and of course we know it's not, right? So, I think that this is kind of, I mean, this could have almost been like a season ending, if in a way. I could see it being a season ending. It's like, okay, now next season he's going to go to this, it's kind of like the way Force Awakens, and he's next season he's going to go to this temple, and yeah.
Well, I think they knew better than to not make this the season ender, because I think a lot of people would have been like, okay, I'm going to wait a year for him to go to another planet and crawl up a thing to put out a beacon. No, I get what you're saying. But the thing is, you had a key phrase there, which is, I think you're talking about them being separated, or this being kind of the end of that story. And you're like, but we know that they're not. That's sort of the problem. And it was my problem with Ahsoka Tano. I liked her in the quieter moments, but in terms of what I'll call the fan service, the introductory scene where she's taking out all those people in the forest, and then later when she's invading the town with Mando and taking on all these people with their double lightsabers, I was rolling my eyes the entire time, because it's a video game. This is not television or cinema where there's dramatic stakes, because at no point does she take on anybody who is on her level, and at no point is there any threat of her being injured. She loses the one lightsaber. I guess it gets like kind of knocked out of her hand and into the water, which is the closest thing we see, but it's not like she gets her hand cut off. She never gets cut or wounded or falls. She's jumping around. She can jump 50 feet in the air. She's outmatched, right? So, and also, I don't quite understand why she's playing with this magistrate to the degree she is. Does the magistrate have dark force powers? Why is she a match for this person who has all of this, force ability and has demonstrated that for the entire episode, but then sort of handles her with kid gloves? If it's just to get information, we've seen how Jedi can get information out of other people and other creatures. So I didn't know exactly what the rules were, or who these characters were, why I should care, or what their powers were, sort of in terms of, if you want to go back to video game language. So it just breezed right past me. I'm like, yeah, this fight scene is going to be over in a couple minutes. Maybe we'll get some dialogue where we move the story forward, but I'm just kind of checking my watch.
Well, I think you're going to get a lot more of that in the Mandalorian because it's a lot of action. I mean, you got to keep
no
the kids
problem. No
happy.
problem with
Yeah.
action, but I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at the last season where you had the mercenaries on that ship, the kind of the breakout episode, you didn't know who was
Yeah.
going to live or die. I'm like, that's some. Even though we just met those characters, they're all very interesting. We get a little bit of story with them, and we get their dynamics. And so as they start falling off, we're like, no, I really wanted to spend more time with that. Well, damn it.
Honestly, there was a moment where I felt like, are they going to have the first live action Ahsoka Tano show up in one chapter just so she can die?
Nope.
I almost
No chance.
No, I almost felt that because there was, I kind of felt. Here's the fact is, with the new sequel trilogy, I mean, she's not alive, and so we know that she dies, but I'm like, could she die in this showdown? Could Beskar Steel go right through her and kill her? I don't know. And it's like, I just feel like, well, because the fact is that she is dead, and we don't know how that, happened necessarily. I felt briefly, like, oh, this, they could do this. This could happen here. That would be bad. That'd be tragic, but it's bound to happen.
Well,
do we know that she's dead?
Apparently. Okay, so apparently when Rey hears all those voices at the end of Rise of Skywalker, like when it's like literally everybody, she hears the voice of Ahsoka. Ahsoka's voice is one of them. Of course, I doubt she even knows who all these voices are, because one of them is also Ezra Bridger, who's another Jedi in training. So that makes you also hear Kenobi, and Mace Windu. Do
we know that it's Ahsoka because her name showed up in the credits? Is that it?
That is, I think her name did show up in the credits, but it was the actress who played the voice from the Clone Wars. Yeah.
Clone Wars. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know I only saw Rise of Skywalker once, and I remember that scene, but I'm like, aside from like the two most recognizable voices, you can't tell who the hell is in that.
Yeah, it could have been the dude from The Simpsons.
Yes. It could have been the guy with the peanut head, for all we know.
There you go.
And the Jedi yeah.
That's right. What was his name? Kiadu Mundi or something?
I don't know. Salter's peanuts, who knows?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I don't know if that, it's so vague though. That can't really confirm she's dead or not. She could be living and her spirit could be talking. Who cares? It's Star Wars. They can write anything. I mean, the Jedi in the temple could be Mace Windu for all we know. When he got pushed out the window, he could have landed on a car.
Yeah, there's been talk about that too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why, but when you mentioned Force Awakens and then Last Jedi, I just thought like, God, well, how horrible would it be if it was like Ezra and he was just kind of just completely dejected like Luke was. He gets Baby Yoda and throws him over his head like the lightsaber. But
that would be funny. I wonder if this will. Now you mentioned briefly, Mike, to Ian. Alluded to this, but at least I think you alluded to this.
Yeah.
Would at least this chapter? You think this would make Ian between season 2 and 3? You think that make him catch up with Clone Wars and Rebels? You think he would finally do it?
I'll give you a cheat code, Ian. Just watch the end of Clone Wars. That way you don't have to watch like 100 episodes.
When you say the end, you mean like the last
season?
The last 4 episodes.
The last season.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is I have no problem with interconnected media.
Yeah.
And it's hard to judge the interconnected media that I am a fan of because I am somewhat immersed in it. I'll use like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example. I've seen all the movies and I like some, don't like others. But I can't say that for someone who's coming in from the outside for the first time, if you watch Captain America Civil War, you can get all of it without having watched, the first one of the first Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not generally a fan of movies where, not necessarily sequels, but when people talk about like, oh, this is my Kurosawa tribute. So if you haven't seen his 6 films, then you're not going to understand what I'm going for, man. I think that's bullshit. And I think it's bad art. So I'm sort of on the fence here with Clone Wars. I understand that there is greater context, but I don't think it's fair to say, well, if you haven't watched these 36 cartoon shows, you're not going to fully appreciate what's going on. I'm like, well, but that's your job as a director and a writer to either bring me up to speed in flashback, in dialogue, in situations, like maybe have the character stick around for more than 20 minutes and give me some reason to fall in love. Because again, I saw this as, you know, when she's bouncing around doing all this stuff, I'm like, maybe this is something that people who were fans of the Clone Wars cartoon were like, I would love to see this in live action. And now I am, and it's amazing. But for me as a noob, I'm like, this is just an OP video game character with really well-rendered special effects who is in no danger at all of, you know, being killed. Now, David, I understand your concern there, and I think it would have been cool if she was invincible up until the very moment when she's not, and then gets run through and killed or something. That would have been, I don't think it would have made up for the lack of dramatic tension leading up to it, but it would have been something. So, yeah, and I like Rosario Dawson, and I was depressed at the end of this because I'm like, you know, she's not getting on the ship with them. She's going off back to her hut or whatever.
Yeah, I am praying that she comes back, and then she says, you know, she sort of puts her traumatized past behind her and agrees to train Yoda in a way. That might be a thing. One thing I did like emotionally.
Grogu.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Grogu.
Swear jar. That's going in the swear jar, Mike.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. But I did like, in terms of not even fan service, but you kind of get the idea of how every character here has been formed by trauma. You know, Mando had his family killed essentially, and kind of had this strange uprising because of his situation. And Grogu had his childhood where people around him were killed. And I think in that way they connect to each other, you know, emotionally and through the Force. And they're both extremely angry. And Ahsoka is angry too. You could tell that she... I felt like she's very, I mean, considering okay, but if we are piggybacking off of, you know, if you've seen the so-and-so, but even if you haven't, you get something's wrong with her. But I do hope that they develop it more than just, oh, let's see another character from a cartoon we could see in live action.
She feels very, almost like content with who she is. Yes, she has that, you know, there is somewhat of a haunted from your past sense about her, but she seems like very confident and content with who she is, you know, when you think about how she started. But I like, you know, the fact that, you know, she's cautious. You know, I don't think she's ticked off. She's cautious, you know, because she knows what's happened. And she even hints that, you know, there's not many of us left anymore. And you know, when you think Obi-Wan, I mean, when we first met Obi-Wan, we thought this is the last Jedi. That wasn't the case, right? I mean, he was talking about, you know, the Clone Wars as if there was something long time ago, you know. You know, he's lying to Luke about his father from a certain point of view. But you know, then we didn't know anything. And now we know a few things. Even if you haven't watched Clone Wars or Rebels, we know, probably mostly because of the prequels, that we know the tragedy of what fear and anger can do to somebody who's when training is incorporated into somebody who's just, you know, so far into fear and anger. That's why they were so hesitant to train Anakin as a boy. And so it's like, man, if you can't train him as a boy, then how young do you start training him? I mean, of course, we saw the younglings and Revenge of the Sith and everything. Briefly. Briefly. Yeah. But that brings me to this whole thing on Coruscant. So Grogu was on Coruscant. How did he get there? I mean, is he... Everybody's saying, oh, Yoda and Yaddle got together and had this... I'm like, come on. That's so obvious.
Yoda and Yaddle? Like, what?
Do you remember Yaddle? Yaddle was the other Yoda creature on the Jedi Council. She was a female Yoda creature.
The pink one with the scar, right?
I don't know if she was pink. She was still green. She just had kind of brown hair. She was on the Jedi Council in all three prequels.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. So, yeah, she was in the round Jedi circle. That was the only other Yoda type creature. And
was that a to me situation?
No.
Sorry. Anyway,
very funny. But so everybody's kind of like, because the big deal was like, oh, there's another creature like Yoda in the prequels. Wow, where's the action figure? So, a lot of people are speculating. Okay, Grogu, he was in the temple. Was he being trained? It sounded like she was alluding to that, but to what end, or to what? Literally to what end? When did they end his training? Obviously, that must have been when Order 666. Is it? It's not 6.
No, just 666. Yeah.
66. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. And then everybody was either killed or dispersed. So he was taken from the temple. We don't know by who. Very interesting, I thought. And then his memory goes dark. Feels alone. Has to hide his powers, or feels in order to survive that he must hide his powers. But again, this goes back to what we've been kind of postulating this whole time or pondering this whole time is what's going on in the child. We get the idea that he has been trained to a certain point, but he's also a child. He's cooing and all this stuff, and so okay. And I feel like whoever's controlling, the creature effects behind controlling this child did a really good job, I think, in this chapter, because I feel like we're getting a lot more out of the characters in this chapter than ever before. Like even like different sounds, different body response, body language. When she mentions Yoda and we hear Yoda's theme, I thought that was just awesome. He actually lifts his head up and looks at her. I was like, whoa, okay. So there's a recognition there. And so he does know some things, and maybe her bringing it up is kind of, bringing these memories to the surface. But
that's, with the whole idea of his memory going dark, I think you hit on something there. That might be, a trigger to open, things that are going to pay off in the future, which I'm totally fine with.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to when these creatures learn how to talk.
Right.
Because again, we don't know how old he is. He could be, he's got to be at least 20 years old, because we're going back to the fall of the Jedi Temple and all that stuff. Because that's like between Sith and Jedi is like probably 20, 25 years.
Right.
If we're looking at the birth of, the twins to, let's say Luke and Leia were 25 by the time they took down the Empire. I don't know how old they were supposed to be. But so I don't know if he was a newborn at the temple, or they're just training him. He'd been at that temple for 75 years. At what point does he learn how to converse with people? Because he's still cooing and talking like a baby,
or use the Force, let alone how much more can or would he have learned now, because he's been so far removed from the temple and whoever trained him? Yes, there's fear and anger, because obviously what happened to him would make him afraid and angry, but what would be the appropriate way to train a boy like Anakin? Okay. What would be the appropriate way? The appropriate way, and this is where the Jedi Council blew it, is they were just rushing through it. They're like, okay, yeah, fine. Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon, yeah, you train him. Okay, we got to go. There's something going on over here. Nobody was really touching into the fact that this kid needs help.
Yep.
Like with his emotions.
Yep.
With his anger, with his fear. How do you counsel him? How do you help him? How do you help somebody like that, step away from the ledge and tap into feelings like hope and faith, forgiveness, atonement or whatever. None of the Jedi Council does none of that. And sure, maybe they're preoccupied by, Dooku and all this stuff, but whatever. It's like they just, a lot of what happened to Anakin is the Council's fault. And of course it inevitably has to happen, right? Because he has to turn into Vader, right? We know that.
Yeah.
but they really dropped the ball there, and so somebody could potentially really help Grogu kind of get back on track to where his training left off or should have been, that kind of path. But it's going to take some time and some patience.
Well, I think one of the things that they're going to have to figure out on the show is how to manifest that in a puppet that barely talks, because what you're saying there is very compelling stuff and a great plot for this series if they decide to pursue it, like the training of Grogu and helping him get over these anger issues. The problem is we're just finding out now towards the end of the second season that he has anger issues, that he has repressed memories, and he had this whole other life before he hooked up with the Mandalorian, and then he's not just a baby. I don't think it's going to work out with a telepath or somebody showing up every once in a while to say, oh yeah, he just told me about this traumatic time and he's got these regrets and all this other stuff, so you need to counsel him. No, we're going to need him to articulate that somehow.
Yeah,
that's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, because he trusts Mandalorian so much, he could still learn a lot from Mando. I mean, look at how, they like Mike said, they have similar backstories and they've both been traumatized. And I mean, Mando had anger and fear towards droids, and look at that. I mean, that's pretty much changed. So I think they have a lot to bond with over, but there's just this barrier too, because Mando doesn't know much about the Force, and I think that Grogu definitely needs somebody to help him tap into the Force in a greater way, because that's why this remnant of the Empire is after him to begin with. Yeah. They want his M count.
Yeah, I just sincerely hope that they don't make Mando Force sensitive himself.
I was just going to ask that.
I don't
because
think so.
I could see that being an end of season 3 development, because he's got that mysterious childhood. He was adopted by the Mandalorians. Maybe the Jedi just hadn't gotten to him yet. Could he turn out to be a Jedi? I'm not saying that's a good idea, but when you were talking there, David, I was like, oh shit, this is.
I would definitely be disappointed. I mean, I just feel like the cool thing is that he's this character who's kind of walking in and out of everything. Meaning, he doesn't. I mean, we just this season, a couple chapters ago, we just realized or learned, as did he, that he's part of this religious, zealot, faction of Mandalorians. That was news to him. It's news to us. So it's like he's kind of, wandering in and out of, maybe who he thought he was or who we thought he was. And that's pretty cool, because after all, it's called The Mandalorian. We should be learning some new things as he learns new things about himself.
Yeah.
I mean, it could end. I'm not going to try, because I'm always wrong when I guess these things. Well, no, I was right about this episode. I said this is the Filoni episode. Mm-hmm. This is going to be the Ahsoka payoff episode. Yeah.
And I was wrong about my theory about her popping up in the last scene of the last chapter. So
she could still.
I mean, we got egg on my face, and it's delicious.
I honestly thought that I was worried they would do that too, with the way everything's like, wait till next episode, look at this big thing, and it's not there. I'm hoping like maybe that this will be if they want to really take a chance with this show, it will end with this season with Grogu being trained by Ahsoka and Mando having to let him go. And it'll be Ahsoka's chance to sort of get over the past, between the two of them.
It's a hard thing, man, because I mean, how do you have
toys?
How do you have another season of The Mandalorian without this whole lone wolf and cub type thing? I mean, where does it go? I mean, yes, I'd like to see them separated, and that would still be a lone wolf and cub thing, but it would be like, now they're separated. What'll happen in season 3? That would be interesting, but I just don't think that these two can. So. I mean, maybe at some point, but I just don't think right away that these two can say goodbye.
Well, it's not right away, because we would be talking about 3 years into a series if they were to do something like that in season 3. I would personally, it's tricky I think this creative team, as much flack as I give them, could pull it off, because last year we were talking about what a tragedy it would be if they brought Boba Fett into the series. And, we haven't seen him since the end of episode or chapter 1, but we all agreed, like, wow, that's a cool way to reintroduce him. Not only just have the character, but also his armor separated from him, kind of repurposed in this new cool way. So I think they could pull it off. I think the key to separating Mando and Grogu is that mercenary episode from the last season that I mentioned. Have him team up with a bunch of like crazy, edge of the universe bounty hunters to do whatever. Maybe it's a mission against the fledgling empire. Maybe they're just going on jobs and it's still this episodic thing week to week, where you could still, I would be fine with that structure as long as it is more of an A-team type of dynamic, where you have characters learning and growing with each other instead of just being introduced and then going away with a promise to come back, Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon style at the end. But yeah, there's still possibilities. I'm still with the show. I'm still very skeptical, but we got a few more episodes left until I can, for me to be wowed. But I would like to transition here briefly, because we're kind of running low on time. We got some very sad news today. David Prowse, the actor who played Darth Vader in Star Wars, the man in the suit, as they say in the sort of the Godzilla parlance, passed away. I only knew him from one other movie, which was A Clockwork Orange. Do you guys know if he had an illustrious career beyond these kind of iconic Darth Vader roles?
Not illustrious, but he did have. He would make some like British commercials, because his size lent him to playing larger than life characters. But he was also in like a couple, I think back when Lucas was kind of courting him. He was doing some like spy stuff, just like really kind of almost like Michael Caine type stuff, like spy stuff, like playing like kind of either like henchman or something like that.
Oh, okay.
But he actually played the Frankenstein monster in a couple of Frankenstein movies. Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. He would show up in Benny Hill sometimes. He played a strong man in Vampire Circus in 1972. That was a year after Clockwork Orange. Just kind of like, he played characters like the bearded torturer in a movie, muscular man in a Roman Greco movie, Up Pompeii. So those types of, roles really, I would imagine that, I forget the stories, but once Lucas contacted him, he gave him the option of two characters, and David Prowse had no intention of dressing up in a furry, costume. So he's like, well, since you don't want to play Chewbacca, how about the other character? And he's the villain. He's like, oh, I'll take the villain. And the key thing is he didn't want to be covered up in a hairy mask and a costume, but Lucas didn't tell him that, Vader would be covered in a mask as well, but
which is, I imagine, at least more comfortable.
I suppose. Yeah. And I've met him once way back, and probably when the special edition came out in theaters. A lot of the original, there you go. A lot of the original actors like Kenny Baker, Anthony Daniels, Prowse, Mayhew, they would show up at places like Wizard World, Chicago, and stuff like that. And I got some action figures signed by these guys. Very nice. He was very nice. He was sitting with, the crazy thing is like it was him, Kenny Baker, Peter Mayhew. It was just like they were all sitting down, but it was just like tiny, large, extra large. It was pretty crazy. But he was a nice guy. From my interaction with him briefly. But it was. I know that he was having some. I think over the years, some financial issues, and then I don't know how long he was dealing with the health. It sounded like it was a short illness, but he was 85, and man, he was the first guy to wear Darth Vader's outfit.
Yeah, and it was always fascinating to me. It's something that I hadn't really reconciled until I was an adult. which is that James Earl James Earl Jones. I almost said James Earl Joyce. I don't know why, but James Joyce. James Joyce as Darth Vader.
Oh,
There's a certain poetic license to it. But no, I always, of course, when I was a kid, thought that the guy doing the voice was the guy in the costume.
Sure.
And then you find out, especially, I think it was later on when they did the DVDs or the Blu-rays where they actually had the outtakes of David Prowse delivering the original lines. And they're like, no, we got to get this weird nasally Scottish kind of accent. We got to get someone with some gravitas. So now when I watch Star Wars, especially the original trilogy, I'm much more conscious of the pantomime, of the fact that this guy, even if he might be delivering his lines just so that have something to key off of, but it's still just this great pantomime and this wonderful physical presence that even if he wasn't able to deliver the words, he almost had more of an effect just by creating this imposing presence.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Prowse's best acting in the role was in Empire Strikes Back. I mean, I think that, especially on the fight on Cloud City, I thought that was fantastic. But I think for me, what first blew my young mind was, when they started showing kind of behind the scenes footage of like Mark Hamill with these swords. No, it wasn't Mark Hamill. I think it was Alec Guinness with the swords, rehearsing with this other guy. Who's this other guy? And I would maybe it was in Starlog magazine or something or whatever, and it would David Prowse who played. I'm like, oh, that's Darth Vader. That's the guy. He just looks like some normal dude. Wow. And then later on, I think in behind the scenes footage of Empire, that now it's Luke, fighting Vader. So you have these behind the scenes footage of Luke with his sword, fighting, practicing with Dave Prowse, and I'm like, oh, wow, it's crazy.
No. And his name's David.
That's right. Well,
he's fighting Dave.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, Mike, jump in here, Mike. What do you want to say about Mr. Prowse, the dearly departed?
Well, I certainly, it's certainly tragic that he's gone. I think he had some kind of beef with George Lucas because he thought they were going to use his voice, and then they didn't. And I think in Revenge of the Sith, they just put Hayden Christensen in the suit. And I was just kind of like, that's not cool. Why would you do that when David Prowse is the guy in the suit? Yeah. But I guess it was because of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. It's sort of one of those stories. It reminds me a little bit of our Ed Wood discussion where you get these guys in Hollywood who kind of just get cast in these type roles, I mean, everyone who's a dwarf gets cast in Star Wars as a as a robot or a teddy bear or something like that. And David Prowse from the summary that David Fowlie gave, it was he was just this guy who was always assigned the role as the monster or something like that. Maybe he didn't mind. Maybe he, because I think he was like a bodybuilder, maybe like a Mr. Universe. Yeah, he was like a Mr. Universe kind of guy. I mean, you can especially tell in Clockwork Orange.
Mm-hmm.
I was just lifting the old man in the wheelchair very effortlessly. But yeah, I mean, there was this wonderful documentary I saw on Netflix maybe 2 years ago, and it was about all the people who kind of did the little bit roles in Star Wars.
Really?
I can't remember the name of it at the top of my head. But David Prowse was in there, and
he talked one called Saving Star Wars.
No, it had a random assortment of numbers. To it. Yeah.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called.
Which is wonderful that we don't know. I mean, that's my fault. So.
Figure it out and send it to me, and I'll put it in the show notes afterwards.
There you go. Elstree 1976 was that?
Yes. That's it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
1976. And David Prowse was one of those prominent figures, and you kind of have the feeling like this guy maybe wanted to be an actor because he was upset that they didn't use his voice, which understandably they wouldn't. As one of the visual effects guys who was working on the movie was saying, it's like, is that Darth Vader's voice, this Scottish guy? And of course, it was the infamous James Earl Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wonder how many people really know about David Prowse beyond, beyond the hardcore fan and base or the cinephiles or people who study pop culture history. So it's good that we're giving some respect towards someone who maybe isn't has been recognized in as much in as many things, because as you've mentioned with Wizard World's a very strange thing where they kind of have as Red Letter Media called it, the celebrity zoo, where people are kind of sitting like in these little like
booths,
basically. Yeah, and people line up, and you can talk to them, but they're kind of looking at you like, okay, do you want the autograph or not? I need the $70.
Oh, I got a story about Lou Ferrigno about that. Yeah.
Oh, tell me. No.
I'll tell you sometime.
Okay, yeah. Okay, but yeah, I mean, you could do that, or you could just watch him eating a sandwich or something like that from a corner, like, oh, there's Christopher Lloyd chewing food in your face.
That's part of that Lou Ferrigno story, actually.
Yeah.
Chew Ferrigno.
Chewy Ferrigno.
But no, that's true. I mean, you don't know how to. Sometimes you don't know how to approach them because part of you there's a curiosity, and part of you there's part of you that feels bad because nobody's talking to them. I remember a friend of mine. We walked up to Vernon Wells, who played the bad guy in Commando, and who played him. I think no, he didn't play Humongous in World War. He played another character, and also James Tolkien, who played Strickland in the Back to the Future movies. It's like nobody was talking to him, and we went up to him, and he had all these stories, and he was so nice, and I was like, no, does anybody know? And that's the thing is like, I think because there's Star Wars banners behind them, and then you have a picture of Darth Vader behind them and everything, so people are doing the math like, oh, he played Darth Vader? Oh, he's so old. Well, yeah, time's passed.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, diehard fans will be like, of course, that's David Prowse. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. But yeah, I mean, those conventions are very specific place, gaining the attention of a specific type of fan or crowd. But outside of those areas, I don't know, if people would, I doubt people would recognize him or remember who he was. When this is announced this weekend, let's face it, there's only a certain, amount of people who would know what what this death means and who he was.
Yeah, I could see some confusion, like Darth Vader actor dies, and then people are like James Earl Jones died.
Yeah. Hayden Christensen.
Jake Lloyd crashes his car.
Oh, well, thankfully Jake Lloyd never got that far. But it's not real life.
That's actually. I feel bad
as Anakin.
Right.
I feel bad for that joke. I feel horrible for what happened to him. I should have made that. Yeah.
It's okay. I'll cut it out. Wait, no, we're live. Sorry.
He's hanging out with Edward Furlong.
Do it.
Oh my god. I'm not going to get sued here, guys. No.
Do they buy drugs from Nick Stahl?
Oh, jeez. You're canceled.
I got canceled for 24 hours on Facebook, like on my birthday.
For saying something that you cannot repeat here on this live stream.
No, I'm not going to repeat it.
Okay, yeah.
No, but yeah. So David Prowse, it is interesting because as you mentioned, he wanted to be in Hollywood, kind of got the entree into doing these bit parts, so he got to be in the movies. Maybe not to the level that he wanted, but it would be nice to think that if he were able to look back on his career and just appreciate that there are legions of fans who do appreciate his presence in the movies, plus the fact that he got to be a part of Star Wars and A Clockwork Orange. I mean, if you're lucky as an actor, even as like a bit actor, a stunt performer, or whatever, to be a part of something that's pop culturally iconic, but it's nuts.
I mean, iconic, you said it. I mean, he played one of the most iconic villains, in cinema.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I mean, our society is kind of strange like that, where we don't pay respect that much to people who are in these smaller roles. They're like, oh, you didn't act, but yet they're a significant part of that history. But of course, we kind of live in this culture where we obsess over celebrities and things of that nature, and we don't see like everyone else who are involved in these productions, whether it be someone who's inside the Darth Vader costume, or it's the gaffers or the grips on the set, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, we are paying our respects. So yeah. R.I.P. David Prowse. This hasn't really, I don't know if this is going to quote unquote affect me at all, but it hasn't really registered because it's been a busy day, but Darth Vader died today. That's really strange. But we are still here, and we're still talking about The Mandalorian, and we'll be back next week with another edition of What If He Doesn't Survive Live. Thank you for those who dropped in and out. We had quite a bit of activity on this stream tonight, and we appreciate it. Yeah. So, please, again, like, subscribe to the channel.
Talk to us.
Smash that like button.
Smash. Yes.
Talk to us.
Yeah, as David said, this stream will be up tomorrow, so you'll be able to come back and catch it if you missed it, or were able to only drop in for a little bit. In the meantime, I'm Ian Simmons from Kicking the Seat. I'm joined, as always, by David Fowlie of Keeping It Real and Mike Crowley, if you'll probably agree. Definitely check out their websites. Can you subscribe to these things? I feel like you can. You can, bookmark them and subscribe them and follow them, because they're both doing the Lord's work, as it were, in the realm of movies. So yes, thank you, gentlemen. And thank you. That, I wish you a good night and a happy end of the stream. Let's see, end broadcast now. Did that work? No.